Did you know that Friday the 13th is in the Bible?
I did not know that.
We're going to talk about that today on the Deep Dive, episode 29. You know who Tom Jones is, Destry?
It's not unusual, baby.
Same guy, right?
Gotcha. Yep.
There's this video of him singing a song once where it like the bass drops or whatever, and he just like flips out dancing, like just shaking everywhere like crazy. One day we'll have to do that when the bass drops on a podcast.
I've seen that. Isn't the floor like lit up?
Yeah.
Is it like it reminds me of Partridge Family kind of a thing?
Yep.
He was he was insane back in the day.
And how he did all that with a mic connected by a cable and not get tangled up or anything. Yeah,
the ladies loved him.
Yep.
They were a little bit crazy about kind of Beatles-ish, Elvis-ish, if you will.
Yep. I know how that is. Just kidding.
You can't go, Josh. You can't go nowhere. You can't go. You can't go anywhere.
It's one thing engineers are known for.
That's right. Their charisma. So,
I think the word today is Riz.
Is that what it is?
I think that's what the guys on the pour over would say.
Oh, okay. We definitely want to use that word then, Riz. So, listen, I wanted to publicly thank Chris, our audio engineer, and you, Joshy Washi, for taking over my life.
I didn't know you knew my middle name.
Washi. I don't know how to spell it, but I'm confident that it's Washi. Because I've taken a leave of absence from everything for the last 7 days, and I got 4 more days to go. So, Gun Club yesterday.
Yeah.
You did Gun Club how was that? I wasn't there. Chris wasn't there, so it must have been a fantastic class.
We didn't really do anything with guns. It was all Bible study.
Good. Yeah. I knew you could fill an hour.
It was fun. I had fun. I don't know if anyone else did, but I had fun.
I'm sure it was a good class. It's a fun group of people for sure. But I've been out doing photography stuff. I've been playing professional photographer for the last 7 days. Mm-hmm. And man, it is a piece of cake. It's just man. Listen, it's a hard job.
My wife makes cakes professionally. I know they're not easy.
They're not easy.
Yeah.
She spends a lot of time doing that.
Yeah.
But
piece of cake is an intimidating thing in our household.
So is photography in 95-degree weather in Florida. It was. It's been fun. It's. I'm being the official photographer for the USA Roller Sports Association in Milton, Florida, where it's the 2024 National Championships. So these kids and adults are coming to this rink that David Weber built. With his own money. It was a dream of his. I used to race bikes with David Weber, and he told me a long time ago about this dream of having this outdoor roller skating rink.
So he's a professional cyclist?
No, he got close to professional, but he was multi-time national and I think international champion on roller sports, roller skate, inline skating. I call it inline skating.
This isn't the same guy that makes the Weber grills?
No.
Okay.
No, different guy.
Okay.
Very charismatic. He's got the Riz. He's got the Riz. People are attracted to this guy, and he's a worker. He works. He'll be out in the sun, digging docks, and then he'll go in and work. He buys the skating rink, and he builds it to be profitable. And now he's built this just monstrosity of this outdoor banked track. It's the only one like it in the country. And people from all over the country come, and they compete there twice a year. This one was the national championships. And they're doing about 25 or 30, I believe, in a very, 200 meter? 200 meter long?
You're talking about miles an hour?
Yes.
On a metric track?
Yes, okay. I am. Yes, it was hard calculating that whenever I was watching.
Imperial speed on a metric track. All right, I got it.
It's banked and it's brilliant blue. You've seen some of the pictures, right?
Yeah.
It's brilliant blue, so it's a photographer's dream to take a picture with a clean background. I got some really good shots of skaters and one particular one of Gene McBride that I used to race and train with. smaller stature, but built like a bulldog.
Yeah.
This guy, I hugged him the other day when I first saw him for the first time in a long time. I'm like, man, dude, you haven't lost any. I mean, he's got to be like 4% body fat or something.
Yeah.
But he gets in his position and he goes around that track. It's a thing of beauty. It really is. It's a thing of beauty. And from him to a little 4-year-old girl trying to, because there's a certain way that you skate, you know, and she's trying to mimic that. And I got great pictures of that. I got a picture of her being real nervous before the start. She has tears in her eyes and just one little tear coming down the side. And she's got her helmet's on crooked, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's sitting there like this. And I got a picture of her skating. I love those type of things.
Yeah.
I love those type of telling that story.
Right.
And then I put them online and parents can buy them and everything. But what I learned was this. Parents with iPhones get on my nerves because
Parents what?
Parents with iPhones get on my nerves.
Gotcha. What if it's an Android?
Either one.
Okay.
iPhone as a generic.
Gotcha.
Because I'm not being paid to be there, but I can sell my property after they are not scared to get in front of a photographer. I had to compete with these people.
Yeah.
And to get in front of after the first couple times of giving awards, I actually said, if you would let me, all you 15 parents right here to take pictures, if you just let me take my picture, I'll get out of your way. and it worked.
There's this old game on the Nintendo 64 system. It was called GoldenEye, and it was a first-person shooter game. And we used to play it when I was in college. And the first-person view, it would, like, if you didn't have any weapons, your only weapon was a karate chop. And so you'd walk up behind somebody, and whoosh, you just see this hand come out and whoosh, karate chop. That's what I'm picturing from your camera view with these people come in front of you with an iPhone or whatever. They're just Destri's hand comes up in front of the camera and karate chops him in the neck.
Verbally, I did do that. It took the first day before everybody realized that I was the official photographer of this governing body, right? Because they started announcing it over and then they'd get out of my way. I'm just kidding, really. I got to know the parents well, but one thing I did learn
after you karate chopped him in the neck.
Karate chop. I'll just say this to anybody, any male. You're a fool if you try to get in between a mother and her baby.
Yeah.
Especially since when that baby just had an accomplishment, you are a fool to try to get in between that.
That's why they have the term mama bear.
That's exactly right. I did not do any karate chopping. I did not say anything bad. I very politely navigated through that, knowing that was the case.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah. No.
Can I take a picture?
That's pretty much it. But it was mutual respect after a while. We worked it out pretty good. But I learned some lessons being there. One is that you have to have systems in your life. You have to have systems down. I say you have to. I'll say it this way. If you do, things will go so much better. And when things go wrong and you have systems in your life, I think you can handle them better. You can handle things coming from the left and coming from the right that you didn't anticipate if you have systems down. And this is what I mean.
Chance favors the prepared mind.
I like that. Yes. If when you're taking pictures, so far I think I started 4 days ago. Took thousands of pictures already. If I don't have a workflow of where to take this information, think about it as just information. This information, if I don't have a way to take this information, put it somewhere in storage to keep it safe, to make room for more information, the information just gets piled up, piled up. So as part of our life and as part of being a photographer is having a system to care for that information and where to put it, have a backup, and be safe. All that stuff you can't just happen on. You've
Right.
got to be prepared for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get behind, you can still go through the system, but you got more work to do later on.
Yeah.
Like I've taken 3,000 pictures so far. I've uploaded 100 of them because I want to edit them and make them really good before I ask somebody to buy them, right?
Right.
In life, I think it's the same way with our Bible studies, with anything that we think is important in life, which if you're listening to this, you're either looking, you're seeking, or you have found who your Savior is, Jesus Christ, and to put him in your life, have a system to where you get to know him. I suggest every day, intentionally. You put that into place. When things pile up, like you get a project at work, one of your kids are sick, or whatever happens, somebody passes away in your family, you can still implement that system if possible. If not, you can maybe tweak it a little bit, but still it's got to be a part of your life. And if it's not, my hope and prayer is that you will feel like something's missing.
Right.
Right? So with everything, I mean, I've been over there for 10 to 14 hours a day taking these pictures and trying to what I've learned is that my system is not good enough.
Right.
But at least it's a system. So I'm trying to fall forward to learn how to have a better, more efficient system as a one-man operation.
Yeah.
All right, because I've got people asking, "Where are the pictures?" Well, you know, they'll be here. They'll be there. I go home and I take the pictures, stay there all day, come back about 7:30, 8, 9 o'clock sometimes, and I sit down and start editing them. And seriously, Josh, picture 2, I'm falling asleep.
Oh, I know
I'm
how
going,
that is. Yeah.
And I'm making mistakes. I'm not doing anybody any good.
Right.
Trying to do that. You know what I mean? So it's just I just got to do what I can do. But at least it's a system, and I hope that our listeners understand that if you're a new believer, hopefully that passion will allow you to maybe take something off your plate and bring Jesus on the plate, however, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Going to a small group, going to church on Sunday, if you haven't been doing that, putting yourself around other people, having a meal with them, whatever it is, start surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And that always sounds like a cult whenever I say that, like-minded people. Move up in the woods somewhere, like-minded.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not what I mean.
Drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But that does help. You know, me being around you guys, I've missed you guys in the last 7 days. I don't know the last time we all went for 7 days and haven't seen y'all.
It's been a while, yeah.
It's been a while, and I haven't set foot. This is the first time I've set foot in this church in 7 days. That's weird. It's been strange. I mean, for 15 years, I've been here almost every day.
Yeah.
And not to be here is strange. It's nice to get away, but it's nicer to be happy to come back.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've still got 4 days of this, but it's been a challenge. And I've got some other lessons that I've learned along the way that I'll share later.
Well, one of the things you said is really interesting because it ties in perfectly with what we're going to be talking about today. You said, that all those pictures that have been taken, that's information. You need a place for that information to be stored so that new information can come in. What we're going to be talking about today, when we eventually get to it, is a very similar idea because God oftentimes created memorials to store information that Israel, it was to their advantage to remember.
Yes.
And what we're going to be talking about today is an example of that.
I hadn't thought of you've taught us a lot about the memorials. Build this in remembrance of me, maybe, or build this, and so you will remember what happened here.
Yeah. Well, the in remembrance of me, you're talking about the Lord's Supper.
That's right.
Just this past Sunday at church, we celebrated the Lord's Supper.
Right.
And that's the event where Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me. We'll be talking about that a little bit more, but kind of the background of what's going on there. But that's literally what God was doing, is creating a mechanism to store information long term that Israel was going to celebrate year after year after year after year to remember an event that happened in the past. But also what we learn is that it was a picture pointing forward to what Christ was also going to do on the cross for us. So really interesting stuff. I think that's cool how it ties in with what you're talking about.
He did that a lot, didn't he? He did, the symbolism.
Yes.
Doing this, knowing that we would be sitting here today, being able to use those things that he used to teach the lessons or to remind people.
Well, I remember there's a verse in Hosea where he literally says, I communicate information in the form of similitudes. Similitudes, which
great
is
word. Chris, you ever heard that word? Similitude.
Yeah, which is basically, speaking of prophecies or important things that needs to be communicated. Oftentimes, it's patterns that are acted out over and over and over again.
Gotcha.
Similitudes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Similitude.
Yep. And that's what the Lord's Supper is. It's
Awesome.
one of those similitudes that has been going on for thousands of years.
Gotcha. One more thing.
Yeah.
One more lesson before we get into that. In between races during this event, I would go back to my tent, and you can picture a tent city around this velodrome type of thing, where people would make their homes during the day and leave the tent up at night, and then come back and start living there again. I would sit, and it was just me, and I had my table out there with my cards and everything. It was just me, and literally right next to my tent was another family. Behind me was a family. There's hundreds of tents set around. So I wish I had earphones so I wouldn't have to listen to everybody. You'd have to actively not listen in order to not hear things that are going on. So if somebody has a voice that cuts through, it's very difficult. And this guy that was to my left had a real strong growth voice, and he really enjoyed using it. So he cut through a whole lot. And I learned something from him. I engaged with him. He engaged with me once during the whole time, because he was a father and a coach to 2 or 3 of the kids that were there. So he had that really extroverted type of attitude, very boisterous. And he was tall. He was intimidating, intimidating guy. And I would hear him interact with people. Again, I wish I didn't. I'd hear him interact with people, and I learned a lot from this guy. That some people communicate best in controversy. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, he walked across my little place, my little tent, went behind me to where the governing body was, and the governing body, one of the ladies said, actually she didn't say, he came up and said, how much are the T-shirts? They were giving away or selling T-shirts with their logo on it. And she said, well, we're giving them away to the athletes right now, and after the races we'll be selling them. Well, how much? And she said, well, that's okay, I'll give you one. No, how much? And he said, nothing's free. Somebody paid for that. And she said, yeah, well, the governing body, we paid for it. He said, how much? 20, 25? And she said, 25. And then he said, well, he told me 20 earlier. He told me 20 earlier. I'm going to get it for 20. And he walked away. I thought, well, you know what? These people was just trying to give him a T-shirt.
Right.
They were going to give him a T-shirt, and he made a controversy out of it.
Yeah.
And I started thinking back about how he's been interacting with other people. He does that with everybody. He did it with me. I didn't realize even what it was until I heard him do it with somebody else.
Right.
He walked through my little tent. Didn't even address me.
Create a disagreement and then win.
He walked. Yes, he walked through and says, "I hope you got some good pictures of my daughter." And no kidding, that was the way it was presented. I said, well, I don't even really know who your daughter is. I've taken pictures of a lot of people. I don't really know who your daughter is. He says, well, maybe that's the problem, isn't it? I'm like, what just happened? You know what I mean? How am I supposed to respond to that?
Yeah.
I don't. And he had other conversations, and he would turn it to be something where he could say something like that and then like walk away.
Yeah.
Or be some type of attack that you would walk away going, what just happened? I don't even realize what was that. And I started thinking, man, I hope I don't. To me, that's a poor representative of a human being, first of all. But two, I start thinking, I wonder what has happened, how he grew up to where he communicates like that. Does that work as a coach and as a father? Does that work well with him? I don't know. But just the 3, 4, 5, 6 interactions, it all had the same formula.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't. He was a genius at turning things around. I mean, think about how you can do that. I want to give you this shirt, but no, I'm going to walk away in a huff, telling you I'm going to give you $20.
Right.
How does that happen?
Yeah.
So I
to lowball someone who was trying to give it to you for free is a unique perspective.
Free 25 to 20.
Yeah.
And he was able to.
I talked him down.
Yeah, he was able to make a controversy out. Look, this was only less than a 30-second conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with me, it was him saying something, me saying something, then him saying something back, and it was such a strange. I think, man, how. I hate to say this, and I know
his day is filled with small victories in his mind.
Maybe that's what. Maybe he's like, got that one too.
Yeah.
But I started thinking, okay. And forgive me, I don't know how. I'm sure he has redeeming qualities. I know, but I start thinking to myself, okay, how can first of all I not be like that and not represent? Because I don't want to represent Christ that way.
Right.
And how whenever like you and I have a gift of being able to influence a small amount of people during the week whenever we teach. Please. So how can we teach not to be that way? You know, I want to be able to recognize those things that may turn people off, and then kind of turn them around and have people be attracted to us, because that's what we want, right? We want people to be attracted to Christ through us.
Yeah.
And whatever it is that we're doing, regardless if it's something similar to the way this guy communicated or something else, you know, what am I saying that might turn people off to initially, so they wouldn't even want to get to know Christ? You know, I think we need to be cognizant of that, right? Of being able to be. We want people to be attracted, at least not turned off by us. Yeah. So we can. So the door can be open and hopefully see Christ in us.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you look at how Christ dealt with controversy.
Oh, man, he was a genius at that. Gosh.
Yeah, I mean, he was. It goes deeper than that, though, because like ultimately he held all the cards, because not only is he the source of truth, but he also had the ability to know what the other person was thinking, because he Scripture tells us that a couple times. It's like he knew what they were thinking, and he said this. But like his methodology in those types of disagreements or controversies or whatever arguments wasn't to like put the other person in their place, but it was to expose them to truth, and he even made it a point to teach truth in love. And his goal in those arguments wasn't like to shut them up and get the last word. It was to bring them to him. And I think that's something that we all struggle with a lot of times, because especially in arguments, the first thing that happens is we get defensive because our pride is at stake. And we feel like that needs to be preserved at all costs. And so we create a controversy that we can win. You know, is it just $25? Yeah, it is. Well, I'll get it for 20 then. You know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess that's what he was. I
don't know.
Doing.
Maybe I'm not. I'm not a psychologist, but it kind of seems like that. it all stems from pride, I think.
I think you're right. I just want to learn, how can we be more attractive to people to have, so Christ can come through. You know what I mean? So maybe Christ put this guy in my life so I could see that and maybe expose a vulnerability in me and vulnerability in another person that I can help coach. I don't know. I don't know. But the good thing is I'll have patience and I'll wait. Because here's the thing. He made an impression. Mm-hmm. That's a positive thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's a positive. Now, how not to be like him? That's I don't want to say that, but just to think about how we represent ourselves.
How not to adopt the same toxic trait.
And whatever that trait is, or expose the traits in us that are toxic, so we can be more attractive to people, because that's what our job is to do. I ate at Burger King the day that y'all had Last Supper.
Right. That's a good segue.
You like that?
Yeah.
I haven't eaten at Burger King in so long, and I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. I've tried to be more healthy, but it's hard to. Another planning is another thing.
I like
about
their
that.
Onion rings and their onion ring dipping sauce. That's about the only thing I like at Burger King, but
that's
good.
It's not a matter of liking. I like it. I'm sure I like it.
Yeah.
But it's, I'm turning 60 this year. It's not as easy to work off as it used to be. Another thing about planning, if you bring, if you don't bring food or whatever, and you're working somewhere out of town for 10 to 14 hours, you're going to Burger King. Yesterday I didn't even eat lunch yesterday. I didn't eat anything till 5 o'clock because I didn't plan properly. Yeah. Had I brought something with me, you guys know I'll pull a little blue buggy around. Got plenty of room, right, Chris? I got plenty of room to put stuff in there, but I didn't even think about it.
When I was a teenager and learning how to drive, my dad was teaching me. We lived out in the country, but we stopped at a Burger King. I got a chicken sandwich, and I asked my dad, I'm like, you want to switch so that I can eat? He's like, nope. And my dad's a truck driver. He's been a truck driver all his life. He's like, nope. You need to learn how to eat while you drive.
Nice. Okay.
He forced me to keep driving and eat the sandwich while I was driving.
Talk on his phone to your mother, too.
Right.
Change the station on the radio. Put your leg up on that steering wheel, son.
Here's a newspaper. Read the news.
I love it. That's a realistic dad right there.
Need some coffee?
That's good. Oh, that's good.
I remember, we're getting way off track.
I'm sorry. Thank you for entertaining my fatigued, psychotic mind this morning, Josh.
I was going to tell you another trucking story, but I'll do that another time. So, while you were eating Burger King this Sunday, we were at church. We were celebrating the Lord's Supper.
Yes.
And oftentimes when we do that in churches today, we go to the New Testament and we kind of read the script, so to speak. It comes from 1 Corinthians is one place. There's a couple of places in the New Testament where the Lord's Supper is talked about, but we often sort of catalog our information about the Lord's Supper with the perspective of the New Testament. They're sitting down. It's Jesus is about to be crucified, and it was the night of, and they're celebrating. They're actually celebrating the Passover, because in the room where they're eating, we all know the famous picture where all 13 of them are sitting down on one side of the table, looking at the person painting them. Yeah,
there was no chairs on that other side.
Right, yeah.
There was a tradition on that.
Yeah, can I get a table for 26? There's only 13 of you, correct. Yeah. Well, so, and they're sitting down at the supper, and they're celebrating the Passover. And the Passover is one of 7 feasts that Israel was instructed in the Old Testament to commemorate every year. And these feasts correspond to significant things in Israel's history, but what we learn in the New Testament is everything in the Old Testament was not just written for our learning, but there is a symbolism there that pointed forward to some aspect of Christ, and Passover did that in spades. And so
That makes the Old Testament a lot more interesting, by the way. If you
Oh,
don't
absolutely.
know that,
Yeah.
I can see how it would be dry reading. But knowing that and looking for those things, it brings the Old Testament alive.
It's a game changer knowing that every page of the Old Testament says something about Christ.
Yeah, right.
Because here again, it's different than the way we expect prophecy to be, where it just says, "Hey, Messiah is going to come in a couple thousand years. This is what to look for."
Yeah.
That's how we expect prophecy to be. But in the Old Testament, especially in that Hebrew mindset, prophecy is acted out in the form of similitudes of like acting out metaphors,
Right.
that kind of thing. And Passover is one of those. So back in Exodus. Back in Exodus 12, and keep in your mind this phrase that Christ said in the New Testament, where he's breaking the bread and he's handing it out, and he says, "This is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me." He said, and he takes the wine, and says, "This is my blood that was shed for you. This do as often as you drink it, do it in remembrance of me." So we have that script in the back of our minds. They're eating the Passover meal. And Jesus starts saying this group of sentences that we now associate in modern times with the Lord's Supper, with the Passover feast. But back in Exodus, this is Exodus chapter 12. So this is right at the end of Israel's time that they spent in Egypt. This is right at the end of their slavery. They're about to be delivered from Egypt. They're heading into the 10th plague, which we know is the killing of the firstborn, right? That's why it's called the Passover, because when they put the blood of the lamb on their doorpost and death comes through, if they see if the blood is on the doorpost, it will pass over that house, and the firstborn won't be killed. So already we can start to see a pattern, a similitude develop, because when the firstborn son was killed, the innocent firstborn son, we should even say, was killed, that's when freedom was granted, because Israel was granted their freedom at the completion of the 10th plague. So there's a subtle inference there.
Right.
Firstborn killed, that's when you get your freedom. That's when you're delivered. Well, this all happened. So in Exodus 12, it starts out, "The Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, and it shall be the first month of the year to you." So the Hebrew calendar is a little bit different than our current Gregorian calendar. 12 months, it's not like January, February, March, nothing like that. The first month on the Hebrew calendar is a month called Nisan, Nisan. And so God was saying, kind of resetting, saying, all right, this is going to be the first month. This is going to be the first day of the month. He said, speaking to the congregation of Israel, saying that in the 10th day of this month, they should take them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And he gives some directions about what the characteristics of this lamb needs to be, without blemish, things like that. And this lamb is ultimately going to be the incorporated into the feast of Passover. It's going to be something that they roast the lamb. They take the blood from the lamb, put it on their doorpost, all that stuff, and it gets consumed in the feast of Passover. Well, so the Hebrew feast, there's 7 of them. It starts with Passover, and there's 3 feasts in the beginning, which are kind of like the spring feasts. There's a center one in the middle of the year, and then there's 3 fall feasts. And those 3 first feasts, interesting enough, today they were recording this episode June 13th. It's on the Jewish calendar. It's the 7th of the month of Sivan, and it's the last day of that 3rd feast, which there's Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of Weeks, which ends on Shavuot, which is yesterday and today. So we're kind of ending that whole Passover time of year today. Well, So in Exodus 12, he says, talking about the lamb, that you'll keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And then he goes in and talks about taking the blood and putting it on the doorpost and all that stuff. He says, when we shall eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. And that's an interesting statement, because when we take communion, sometimes it's called communion, sometimes it's called the Lord's Supper. That phrase Lord's Supper comes from this, because he says this is the Lord's Passover. So this isn't something that talks about you. This is my Passover. Okay. This is a memorial that I'm creating that you're going to commemorate year after year. It's the Lord's feast. It's the Lord's Passover. It's the Lord's Supper. Okay. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And this is kind of interesting, because at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned Friday the 13th.
Yes.
The 14th of Nisan is a Saturday. It's a Sabbath. The night before that is Friday the 13th. And so from the Hebrew perspective, their days start in the evening. So the evening of what we would call the 13th would be the beginning of their 14th.
Okay.
But from Egypt's perspective, all the firstborn were killed on Friday the 13th.
Oh, wow.
Really interesting coincidence there.
And that is where the quote bad luck started coming from. I mean,
a lot of people claim that as its origin.
Right.
I'm sure there's arguments to the contrary, but regardless, it's a Friday the 13th.
Right.
It's an unlucky day, right? For Egypt. So he said, I'll pass through the land of Egypt this night. I'll smite the firstborn, all that stuff. He says, and the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial. Ye shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So this is the start of a process that lasted even to this day. So thousands of years. The Passover has been celebrated on the 14th of Nisan, the 14th day of the first month, Jewish month, since the Passover, which was like 1400 something BC.
Okay.
And so, and for the entirety of the Old Testament, as the Passover has been commemorated, and even now, it harkens back to this event where God went through Egypt, and if the blood wasn't on the doorpost, the firstborn of that house was killed. Well, in addition to the lamb that was consumed on the Passover feast, there was a bread component, there was a wine component. There are several different components there, and this was the Passover feast that Hebrews would celebrate every year. So we get as we start to progress forward through history. We're getting away from Exodus 12, where Egypt or Israel, they're delivered from Egypt. They go to Mount Sinai. God gives them the law, gives them more. Part of the law is more details about the specific components of the Passover. They wander the wilderness 40 years. They enter the land of Canaan. There's the Assyrian and the Babylonian captivities, and as history progresses down through the empires, the Jewish people are celebrating this every single year. And so we get to during the time of the Roman Empire. In the New Testament, Jesus, he's with his disciples, and he says, "Hey, I want you guys to go find this room and prepare it, because tonight we're gonna celebrate the Passover." And so now we're in the New Testament, and let's go to 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 5. There's this verse in verse 21 that talks about Christ, about how he was made for he hath made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. This is an allusion to Christ's death on the cross, right? He was made sin for us. He, that verse that we all know, John 3:16. He was for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son.
Yes,
that's an important phrase. The begotten Son. He was the firstborn. He was God's Son that was begotten. We're all God's sons and daughters by adoption.
Yes.
Christ was God's Son. He was God in the flesh, but in describing that relationship, he was a begotten Son, and so. What does it? Spell that out for us. What does begotten mean? He was born.
He was born. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't adopted. So
gotcha.
John 1, right? God came, became man.
Yes.
And that the identity of that person is Jesus Christ.
Right. Okay.
And when we're talking about the Trinity, we call that the Son of God.
Yes.
Not because it's a different person, but because he was a son, but he was also God.
Gotcha.
So anyway, we have this firstborn son who was sacrificed, and that's how we as sinful human beings were granted our freedom. That's the nature of salvation, right?
Right.
And so when Jesus, the night of his crucifixion, when he was celebrating the Passover with his disciples, he took of that bread, he took of that wine, and he started passing it around. He says, "This is my body, this is my blood." So as often as you drink this bread or eat this bread and drink this wine, do it in remembrance of me. So for the past couple, 1,000 or so years, 1,500 years or so, they've been doing it in remembrance of Egypt, of that 10th plague in Egypt, the Passover, where they were granted their freedom. Yeah. Jesus elaborated on that picture and said, this bread that you've been eating for the Passover, this is a symbol of my body, which is broken. This wine that you've been drinking, grape juice, whatever, this is a symbol of my blood that's going to be shed. So now, whenever you're sitting here eating this Passover meal and doing it in remembrance of what God did for you in Egypt, now do this in remembrance of me, because this is creating a line in the history, in human history. You're being delivered from something far more significant than slavery in Egypt.
Right.
You're being delivered from slavery from slavery to sin.
And Josh, that is a genius marketing move.
Yes.
You think about that in today's terms. He's taken a symbol or forgive me if this sounds crazy. He's taken a logo that everybody knows, and he has totally switched it to something else.
Yeah.
Where everybody will automatically know what it is. They recognize. With Pepsi, you don't even have to see the word Pepsi. You see that spherical thing, red, white, and blue. You know that's Pepsi. Same way with Coke. Same way with Apple.
Right.
And those are genius marketing. And God created it, so he knew. Perhaps that was one of the first marketing pivots.
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier about storing that information.
Right.
Well, this was a very similar mechanism that God used, because that Passover feast, he says, okay, store this information. We're going to use this information later. Store it. Celebrate this for the next 1,500 years. This is going to become important again. And so we need to keep this stored in our recent memory. When Jesus comes along and he's celebrating that same Passover feast, which Jesus is Lord.
Yes.
It was the Lord's Passover. This was his feast. All the way from the beginning. He said that. He alluded to that in Exodus 12. It says, "Do this now in remembrance of me." And so when we celebrate the Lord's Supper, we don't, in churches today, we don't necessarily do it once a year on the 14th day of the Jewish month of Nisan. We do it more than that or less than that. It's kind of on an individual church's basis, but we commonly take those two elements and we isolate them, and we look back at this symbolism and remind ourselves of what Christ did, what that meant,
Right.
and the significance of all of that.
Mhm.
And we call that the Lord's Supper. And I think
Right.
that's really cool because, like you said, it's a genius marketing move.
Yeah.
Take something that's in people's memory for their tradition, something that's part of their identity, and tell them, hey, this means something deeper than you've ever realized.
Right. It's kind of assimilating the information, right?
Right.
It's not totally changing it.
Yeah.
But it's assimilating what you already know.
Yeah.
I mean, even,
saying there's always been a deeper meaning to
Yeah.
this. It didn't just look backward. It also
Right.
pointed forward.
It literally
Yeah.
just gives me chills. I just
Yeah.
got chill bumps thinking about how smart that is and how you can't make this stuff up, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To our non-believer listeners, you can't make this stuff up.
Right.
It's just so
and that's one of the
incredible.
reasons it's one of there's two ordinances of the church, right? Baptism and Lord's Supper.
The
And-
symbolism in baptism means even more whenever you study like we're studying today.
yeah, because baptism harkens back to something that was deeply rooted in their Old Testament tradition.
And it's a visual.
Yeah.
It's physical. It's you think about him every time. I mean, if you
Right.
study like we're studying today, you look at somebody getting baptized, you think of Christ and what he's done for you without any words
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah. I'm the firstborn son.
Awesome. It's fantastic,
Yeah.
man. It really is. And Josh, what I love about your Bible studies is you bring this stuff to us and you bring it alive. You know what I mean? You tell the stories like you just told, and it's so, at least for me, and this is one of the reasons we started this podcast, is because we would have these conversations just with Josh and me in my office or in this classroom or something or another. We
Right.
would just talk about this. I don't know why I would ask questions or something that would.
Well,
would elicit-
it's exciting stuff to share regardless.
You're passionate about it, and what nothing better to be passionate about, right?
Hope so. Yeah.
Anything else you want to share with us about that?
Oh, tons, but we're out of time.
Yeah, I gotcha. There is tons to share. Hey, appreciate everybody listening. Thank you very much. We're at 46 minutes. Chris, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And
The invisible third chair.
yeah, he's there. He's there. Over there. To my left, to your right is Chris. Everybody. And thank you for everybody for facilitating, for allowing me to walk in here fatigued and not really function, but allowing me to sit behind this board and be here. It's something very important, and I'm glad that we did. I thought about canceling today, but I thought, it's just not what I want to do. It's just
No
not-
one wants to see me only for 45 minutes.
That was my main purpose. For our listeners and viewers, I keep saying listeners, but we're viewing too.
Yeah.
We're viewing too. If I get that workflow down, where I get the video over.
Yeah, everyone can see me in my nice bright my bright orange inspection shirt.
You're not going to be missed, that's for sure. How many do we have on YouTube now? Do we have 1, 2,
4?
4 on
Yeah,
YouTube?
we've got a couple in storage
Okay.
that were. I don't know. I don't know if we still have the video for them or not.
I'm not sure either. I have to look.
Yeah,
at
there's a
mine.
couple we missed just because we're in the process of transitioning over from one set of equipment to another.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Hey, I just thought
we're
something.
getting better.
If on Chris, you're doing the YouTube channel, right? And if people would like to give us some feedback, how does it sound? How does it look? Thoughts of topics, anything that you want to communicate with us, just put it down in the comments section, and Chris will either pass it to us, or if he knows the answer, he'll answer it. We really want your feedback. We really want your feedback as best and as articulate and as kind as you can put it. We appreciate it. But thanks for listening, everybody. Josh, thanks for being here. Chris, thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate y'all.